If I told you there was a proven diet with lipedema that could increase your fat loss by 3 times and could lower your pain by up to 4 times, would you do it? Let's check it out. So in all the studies so far, overwhelmingly, the best nutritional diet for the outcomes of weight loss and pain reduction and lowered inflammation is a low carbohydrate diet for lipedema and for managing the symptoms associated with it. Now, a low carb diet could potentially be just low carbs and eating everything else. It could also be following a ketogenic diet where you're specifically trying to induce ketones into your body. So you have to measure your carbs a little bit more specifically and follow a few more rules. Or then there's carnivore, which automatically puts you into an anti-inflammatory and low-carb lifestyle because it removes everything else that is carbohydrates in our world. So these studies were comparing from a low-carb, high-fat diet to a high-carb, low-fat diet. So they had kind of the opposites, and that's pretty much where we all stand on dietary regimes anyway. So they were comparing the two, and overwhelmingly they found that the low-carb, high-fat diet increased weight loss and reduced pain. So how do you start a low-carb diet? Well, the very simple way of going about it is understanding that breads, pastas, grains, that group of foods, anything that you make cakes, cookies with, that kind of thing, is all carbohydrates. If you cut out that whole group of foods, that's your starting point. If you go down another layer, then you're looking at vegetables and fruits. They are also carbohydrates. However, they have a different nutritional profile in them and aren't necessarily always needed to be removed for your body to be in a low carb state. It may not produce ketones for you, but it may be enough for you to lower your pain levels and increase your fat loss. Now, increasing your fat loss, let's just be clear here, we are not talking about lipedema fat. It is extremely unlikely that you can diet away the lipedema fat. However, with the lipedema fat comes the other fat, likely from sitting around, from being immobile, from struggling to move because everything hurts. So we tend to pack on the pounds just because of the pain of lipedema in its own right. So some people can have all the meats and the animal foods and the fruit and veg, and it can make a huge difference, particularly if you're coming from a high processed diet in the beginning. That can be a great starting point for people. Then you can go another step further into the keto world of measuring your ketones every day with a blood glucose monitor that will tell you whether you're in ketosis. And if you're in ketosis, you've flipped from sugar burning to fat burning. And when you swap to fat burning, your body produces these ketones, and ketones are actually anti-inflammatory. Now, going on a ketogenic diet is a little bit more tricky to get your head around because you have to measure everything. Some people need to eat less than 20 grams of carbohydrates a day to get themselves into ketosis. Other people can have as much as 100 grams of carbohydrates a day to stay in ketosis. It is so different for everybody. That is why I highly recommend getting a blood glucose monitor, one that also tests for ketones, because some of them only test the blood glucose amount. So get one that also tests for ketones and test yourself. Find out where you stand on that spectrum of how strict you have to be on the low carbohydrates to get yourself into ketosis. Once you're in ketosis, sit with it for a while and see if it makes a difference to your pain levels, your weight, inflammation, anything else that's going on for you. And then, as I said earlier, the final, most strict, but yet the easiest, it's really strange, is the carnivore diet. I was plant-based for decades, and in fact, most of my life, I was veering towards vegetarian. My mother couldn't get me to eat meat for love or money. It was just one of those things. I preferred the plants. So for me to say now my body thrives on carnivore is still insane for me to hear. But here's the thing with carnivore. If you've got inflammation in the body, you're removing everything that could possibly be causing a problem. So you're removing all the plant foods that all come with plant toxins because that's the way they save themselves from being eaten. That's their protective mechanism. And we ingest it. So there's little sensitivities to some plants and not others. And, we all have intolerances to different plant foods. Unless you have an actual mammalian allergy to meat, very few people have an issue with meat, particularly the ruminant animals, which carnivores tend to eat mostly, which is beef, bison, lamb. And you could have a broader carnivore diet where you eat any kinds of animal foods. So the only other issue with those sorts of foods is if you have a fish or a seafood allergy, which would cut out that little sort of section of animal foods for you, or eggs. But apart from that, the carnivore diet, even though it seems the strictest, if you allow yourself to have any of the animal foods, it's actually the easiest because you just have whatever you want to have. Since I've been following this, I keep in the fridge. Back home in Australia, I would always keep roast beef, chicken drumsticks, chicken wings, turkey patties, beef patties, anything that was easy to make. And I would make it up in big bundles, keep it in the fridge. It was easy to grab at any meal. If I didn't feel like any of those at the next meal, I would make myself some eggs or something like that. So it's kind of super easy. So that's the one thing. And people would say to me every now and again, don't you get bored? To which I say, don't you eat the same foods week in, week out? Don't you have Friday night fish and chip night? Don't you have Sunday roast dinners? Don't you have Tuesday night leftover night? We eat the same things as creatures of habit. The minute we change our diet, we don't have a neural pathway built yet for that new diet. So we look at every reason under the sun as to why we should not continue that diet, whether it's keto, carnivore, just low carb in general, and removing all the junk food. Our brain is already wired for the way we've been eating. So any change is going to be uncomfortable while our brain restructures those neural pathways to accept this new way of eating. And it does happen. Ex-plant-based eater to now, I live off meat, chicken, eggs, bacon, butter. Who'd have thought, right? So my brain has now built those neural pathways to support that low carb eating and mostly carnivore actually suits me, feels good to me, as long as I'm organized and have what I need in the fridge at any given time. So don't dismiss carnivore because you think it's too restrictive or you think you're going to get bored with it. You're going to get bored with any change in your diet. We all know this because how many diets have we done? If you're anything like me, I lost count when I was probably 21. You probably have too. So let's just keep in mind that the studies, the research around lipedema has shown that this style of eating, 3 times more weight loss, 4 times less pain. This is what we're searching for. These is kind of the answers to what we're dealing with on an everyday basis until they come up with more research that definitively shows what we can do to reverse this thing. So I would say the first thing that you want to do, if you are following a standard American, a standard Australian, a standard European diet right now, the first thing you want to do is cut out the grains. Grains have been shown to be toxic to the lymphatics. We have got compromised lymphatics. So cut out all the grains. That's the starting point, and often that is the hardest part because we're addicted to them. I didn't understand how addicted I was to them until I'd been carnivore for, a couple of months. And then we were having a treat day. Can't remember why. Maybe it was, birthday or something. And I went down to our fancy grocery store to get a treat for us. I'm standing in this grocery store and I'm looking around and I realized all the things that I was honing in on going, oh, should I get that? Oh, should I get that? Was all grain based. Every single thing. It was the breads, it was the pastas, it was the cakes, it was the cookies, right? And it was then that I went, oh my goodness, I'm addicted to grains. It wasn't so much I was addicted to carbs because I can eat veggies and not feel like I need to eat them the next day. It's the bread products, it's the flour products, it's the wheat, it's all the things that make it so yummy you become addicted to. So that would be the starting point. Find different options to have instead of whatever grains you're having now. So you might want to start with breakfast. Say you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you have some kind of grain at every meal. Start with breakfast. Remove the toast, remove the cereal, bacon and eggs just on its own. It seems weird at first. You kind of feel almost like you're not satiated because you haven't had those cereals, you haven't had those grains. That does pass. Eventually you get to a point where you can have a bowl of scrambled eggs and be perfectly satisfied. But in the beginning, you're going to think, oh no, I'm still hungry. If you feel like you're still hungry, have more meat. Have more meat 2 hours later. I did a test back in Australia before I left where I ate 140 grams of protein a day over a week to see if I could fit it in because I've had a gastric sleeve. That's a lot of meat. So 140 grams isn't the weight, it's 140 grams of protein. For example, in one egg, there's 6 grams of protein. So if you're trying to get in 140 grams of protein in a day and 3 eggs, which is all that I can fit in at this point, scrambled up, that's only 18 grams of protein out of the 140. So I had to eat every couple of hours to get that amount of meat in. But let me tell you, my weight dropped off me and I was not hungry. In fact, I got to day 4 or 5 and I stopped because I just could not eat another bite. It was just too much for me because I was not hungry at all. I was completely satiated. So you do get past that feeling. So that is your starting point. You're going to head for your grains and remove those, and you're going to take it one meal at a time. Don't try and do it all at once unless you're one of those all or nothing people. If that's you, then you probably have to go cold turkey, and that would be a quicker way to get past the cravings. Having said that, if you're up for that. But if that's too overwhelming for you and just too much, then a bit at a time is just as good. Doesn't matter how quickly you get there, as long as you get there with this being a normal way of eating for you. Now, in the beginning, as I said, grains is a great way to stop. Have potato instead. Have whole potato, baked, no oils, no fats, that kind of thing, because that'll be a far better option than any of the bread products, the grain products, the wheat products. So that would be your sort of stepping stone down into then eating lower carb vegetables once you've nailed the grains. Okay, so bit at a time. Don't beat yourself up unless you need to go all in by all means. But here's your starting point. The grains first, then the higher carb vegetables like the potatoes, even the sweet potatoes, that kind of thing. The high sugared fruits, the high fructose fruits, all of those need to go. There's a lot, but it depends on how much pain you're in. Because if you get to a point where you can't move, you're immobile, the thought of doing the things that you need to do just on an everyday basis, you can't do them anymore. You need to get your head around this style of a diet. Until they come up with some other diet that is the best diet for lipedema, this is what we're working with. So you can either get your head around it and go, okay, this is what I've got to do, which is why you do the emotional work to get your head around doing this kind of lifestyle. Because all of us think, why can't we just eat whatever we want? Why can't we just eat normally? And it's really funny because I thought a lot about this because I think there's such a thing as the soul food, where if you are out and about in Bangkok, like I am, and you want to have a dumpling or you want to have a mu ping, which is pork on a stick, but it's got coconut sugar in it. It is sweet and delicious. But if you want to have those things, that's more soul food. So there's kind of this distinction with all our food, and we say, oh, we just want to be able to eat normally, and it's not fair that we can't eat normally and have a normal body because look at all those other people out there that can do it. Bottom line is, we've got what we've got. It is what it is. You don't know what those people that look like they're slim and fit and healthy and can eat whatever they want, you don't know what's going on behind closed doors. My husband always says that. You don't know what's going on behind closed doors. It's not your journey to be thinking about what other people are doing. It's your journey to figure out what you need and what you need to do from the emotional perspective to help you get into this diet and to follow this way of eating most of the time. I don't follow this all the time. I have one day a week when we go out and I have different things. There are days in the house because my husband has desserts in the house and I might have different desserty things and roti from the markets. But this is generally not an everyday thing for me when I've got my head on straight. The first month or two that we were here, it became an everyday thing and I felt it. I definitely felt it. And in the lead up to my surgery, I decided, okay, that's it. We've got to get back to normal here. And really the only thing extra that I was having was the desserts. So I severely cut those. I'm still having a bit here and there, but nothing like I was when I first got here, and I'm feeling much better for it. And I think I've dropped 2 kilos because of it. It creeps up on you. It's very easy to creep up on you on these sugars because sugars are addictive. Carbs are addictive. Grains are addictive. How you choose what you're going to eat on that spectrum of low carb fully depends on, are you an abstainer or a moderator? Can you go a little bit at a time and be okay? Or do you need to go cold turkey? Do you need to have to go to the full carnivore diet so that you can just eat whatever you want, whenever you want? And that's the beauty of the carnivore diet. The keto diet, you have to measure, weigh things, track your ketones, that kind of thing, to see what you can eat. And that's an ongoing process every single day. That's a lot for some people. That would be a lot for me. I wouldn't be able to fit that in. So for me, carnivore gives me freedom of that it is genuinely a low carb diet because you're not having other things. Then because I follow that most of the time, on the days out, if we go out or if one night we meet somebody up at the markets or we have a dessert, it's no big deal. I can now just swing back into eggs, meat, which is kind of my daily routine now. It's always eggs for breakfast, 3 eggs. Sometimes there's a bit of meat cut into it. Then it'll be eggs and meat for lunch. It might just be meat for dinner. Occasionally, like last night, it was meat and cabbage and onion. Onion is quite high in fructose, so we've got to do a video on fructose because this is a kick in the ass kind of stuff where you think you're eating the veggies and you can't work out why you're still not changing your weight and your pain levels, and you're putting onion in every single thing. It's very high in fructose. There's certain things that are problematic in our diet when it comes to adding in the fruits and veggies, which is why, again, carnivore is just super easy. I would highly encourage you to think that way. If you think you're going to struggle with having a bit of fruit and you want more fruit, or having a bit of sugar, a bit of, whatever it is, and you're not going to be able to stop at that, carnivore, as much meat as you want, no cooking with seed oils. You've got to cook with butter, ghee, or any kind of animal fat, right? I cook bacon. When I cook bacon, I tip the fat from the bacon that's left into a little container and I keep that in the fridge. That is brilliant to cook with. And the bacon in with whatever I'm cooking tastes amazing. It's what our ancestors did. It's what our great-grandparents did. They kept the drippings. I don't know how old you are, but there are families out there or generations out there that bread and drippings were a Sunday night dinner. So it was bread. This to me sounds actually really quite awful, but bread with the drippings, like the leftover bacon grease or whatever, that just doesn't sound right to me. But this was a normal thing to have this kind of food that was real food. Our body knows what to do with the animal fat. It doesn't know what to do with these seed oils that have been processed and sterilized and hydrolyzed and all the things. Our body doesn't know what to do with it. So it holds it, it stores it, it alters our body chemistry, and it drives lipedema. It drives inflammation, it drives pain. So we don't want any of that. So there's your options, right? So low carb, if you want to reduce some weight, reduce your pain levels, then low carb is what you're working with. Where you sit on that low carb spectrum is completely up to you, and where you're at emotionally and in your mind and your willpower, that kind of thing, and potentially your wallet, your financial situation, that kind of thing. Then the other rules around this is no sugar, no fructose, no seed oils, no soy, because soy can interrupt hormones, and it's hormones and inflammation that drive lipedema, and no artificial sweeteners, because they just wreck us. The other thing that artificial sweeteners do is they keep the sweet taste on our tongue. Forget that they're killing off brain cells and horrible things like that. They keep us wanting that sweet flavor. They keep us wanting to have more of the fruit, more of the veggies, more of the grains, more of the bread, all of that kind of thing. So if you struggle in that way, do not start having diet drinks with all your meat, because you will struggle. You will be white knuckling it and trying really hard not to go for other things. So they're the other rules. Apart from the low carb, whichever family you're going to start with, you're going to not use seed oils. You're going to use lard, bacon fat, duck fat. Duck fat is amazing. Have you ever been to a restaurant where they've cooked potato in duck fat? I don't recommend the potato, but cooking in duck fat is just delicious. Any of those sorts of things, and butter. Cook in butter as well. I cook in butter here. That's all I've found here, apart from my bacon fat that I have made myself because of cooking bacon. So until I find any kind of duck fat, that's what I'll continue to use, is those two things. No artificial sweeteners, no soy, and of course no processed foods and junk foods, because that's probably what grew us in the beginning, is when we started eating all these processed foods because they were convenient. Convenience kills us. And we then got really busy in our life, so we needed these convenient foods. And life seems to be this big race now. Well, it's a rat race, right? Where we seem to be rushing through life like our life depends upon getting there the quickest amount of time. But what happens is, because we're rushing to get to this magical finish line of life, we don't have time to do the things that nurture our body. And we've got a body that is compromised. We have got a body that has got lymphatics that are leaky, causing us pain. So because we've got that, for good or bad, and it doesn't matter that other people don't have it and that we have it and it's not fair. Other people have worse things than lipedema. It is what it is. We just have to pull ourselves up. There's a saying that I have on my Facebook page, and it says, nobody's coming to save you. Get up. And I put that there for me to remind me that nobody ever was coming to save me and my body. I had to do it. I had to have the double knee replacement so I could walk. I had to have the weight loss surgery so I had a chance at losing the weight. I had to follow a diet that was anti-inflammatory and low carb so that I could keep my lipedema in check. Nobody can do it for me. You can have all the information under the sun. You can have all of the studies presented to you that tells you what's what when it comes to the science side of it, but nobody can do it for you. Nobody can do it for me. You have to get to a point where, you know what? I need to do this. I need to feel better. I need to have a happier lipedema life, no matter what that looks like. So, what can we have? We've kind of spoken about what we shouldn't be having at length, but what can we have? We can have any kind of animal food for a start. If you need to cook in something other than animal fat or butter, then pure olive oil is the go. However, make sure it is pure. There are so many olive oils on the supermarket shelves that is cut with seed oils. So you need to make sure it is 100% pure. Like, go to an olive farm, go to somewhere where, it's going to cost you, okay? Because if it's cheap, it's not real olive oil. And same with avocado oil. But avocado oil, I haven't seen too many cheap ones out there. But I'm not a fan of the taste of avocado oil. So that's why I stick with butter and bacon fat or duck fat, because it just tastes good. So that's up to you what you want to do there. But you can use those things. You can use coconut oil as well, the pure coconut oil. But that tends to give everything a bit of a coconutty flavor. So that's not my ideal either. Again, protein, any kind of meat, any kind of fish, seafood, any kind of animal product. The wider variety of meats that you do eat, the wider variety of nutrients you will get. For example, pork is really high in B1, much higher than all of the other meats. By mixing it up, having lamb one day, pork another day, I used to, in Australia, mix turkey mince and beef mince. There's a video here somewhere on that recipe. It's delicious. I can't get either here yet so far. I'm still searching. Having those patties, you've got 2 more different kinds of meats, so another different vitamin, mineral, nutritional profile, so that you're getting something from everything. So mix it up. Buy yourself prawns or shrimp once a week. Buy yourself a piece of fish if that's your thing. You know, mix it all up. Get the lamb, get the rack, get the ribeye, get the chuck steak, whatever suits you and whatever tastes good to you, but mix it up so that you have got a variety. Low dairy, that's the only caveat to the animal food. Butter is considered a fat, so it's hardly got any lactose left in it, so it is mostly fat. So that's not a problem. However, the other dairy foods seem to be inflammatory to a lipedema body. In fact, it's inflammatory to so many people because, let's face it, the milk of another animal was designed to grow that animal's baby. So the milk of a cow was designed to grow that baby calf to a big cow really quickly. We don't want to do that to ourselves, and that's what will happen if we have and consume a lot of dairy. Parmesan cheese is quite low in lactose, so the butter and Parmesan will be not too bad every now and again. I find I can have the butter all the time, and the cheese, the Parmesan, quite regularly. I had it in Australia and it didn't seem to cause me any problems. So that's your sort of basics, but the rest of the dairy is kind of a no-no. If you want to keep the fruits on the lower end of the sugar, it's the berries, it's grapefruit, and I've had to look up because the pawpaw, the papaya here, is insanely good and so sweet, because you know how papaya can sometimes have a weird taste? Here it is amazing. And so I had to look up how much fructose was in it, because that's what I was using instead of dessert. When I decided to cut the dessert, I was having a bit of papaya after my dinner, and I was very happy to discover that it's quite low on the end of the fructose. So that's another option for you also. Nuts and seeds, if they agree with you, often they don't agree with people, then macadamia and pecans are higher in the omega-3 ratio to omega-6s, and omega-6s are the seed oils. They are inflammatory to our body. So we want to keep the omega-6s low and the omega-3s high. Now, the other thing we need to remember is hydration. And I am really bad at hydration. I forget it. I just forget. I always have, before weight loss surgery and after weight loss surgery. I just forget to drink. My husband is a complete opposite. He's always drinking, and he often reminds me, have you been drinking? Because it's easy to forget that kind of thing. I don't know if I'm the only one around like that, so tell me if you're in the same camp. I've tried so many things to make me drink more, but literally I have to treat it like a job if I want to get more fluid into me. But the key with water is warm water. Even boiling the kettle and having it almost hot, so cup of tea kind of temperature, and sipping on it, it actually gives you a feeling of you are having a hot beverage rather than just a glass of water. So try that, and it's actually better for your lymphatics, because any way that you can warm up your body, you will make the lymphatics flow better. So that's another little tip to help your lymphatics. And drink more water. Bone broth is another option when it comes to drinking, and that will be really helpful for your gut health. And often when we've got leaky lymphatics, we've also got a leaky gut, and they've shown that bone broth is one of the best things to help heal leaky gut. I'm sure they haven't done studies on whether or not bone broth helps leaky lymphatics. Maybe one day they will, but I'm going to just go ahead and say bone broth. If you're looking for something between meals and you don't want a snack, find a bone broth, make a bone broth. There is so many recipes online. Find what you like, but there's also companies that sell bone broth in powder form that you can just add boiling water to make it easy on you. You don't have to slow simmer for 24 hours your own bone broth from scratch. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. Now, another thing that I have tested with this way of eating is drinking a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in a small glass of cold water. It kind of tastes like wine if you kind of look sideways at it hard enough. That's why I make it cold, and I put it in a little wine glass or a little liqueur glass. You sip on that before your meals. It's shown to have kind of like a GLP-1 effect in the body. And I have to admit that when I was doing that in Australia, I actually haven't found a bottle here yet in Bangkok, but when I was doing that, it really lowered my hunger levels. It lowered the amount of food that I could eat. It was actually quite astonishing. So if you're struggling with food amounts or with always being hungry, try doing that. When you're making your meal, sip on a tiny, don't make it too big, because if you, like me, and you can't drink a lot of water, you're going to struggle with that as well, and you want to get it in, but you still want enough that you're not drinking straight apple cider vinegar. Make sure the apple cider vinegar that you buy has the mother in it, so it'll have all goopy stuff down the bottom of the thing. That's a good thing. It's kind of like kefir or kombucha. It's like the mother. That's where the bacteria is, and that's where it's grown. So you want to see that in the bottom of your glass bottle. 1 tablespoon, glass of water, sip on it. Tell me how you go. The only other thing that you may want to add to this way of eating is intermittent fasting. Now, personally, I'm not a fan of intermittent fasting because of the effects on the thyroid. If we don't have protein fairly early, first thing in the morning, that can sometimes send your adrenals into fight or flight. It's a safety thing, right? You have some protein for breakfast and your whole body, your adrenals go, oh, we're safe, we've eaten for the day. Okay, so it's like a caveman thing. If we're not eating, it can affect the adrenals, and anything that affects the adrenals affects the thyroid. And because I have thyroid disease and I know a lot about that, I've always kind of avoided intermittent fasting. Also with women, it's not so much recommended to intermittent fast. And let's face it, if you're here, you're a woman. So there are a few people. So there's Dr. Mindy Peltz, who wrote a book called Fast Like a Girl. I have not read it yet, so I don't know what the differences is between how she is suggesting that you fast, but there are differences. And also Stacey Sims, I think her name is, also a different way of fasting for women, a way to do it safely. So if you're going to consider intermittent fasting, then check those people out first, because a lot of the keto sites, a lot of the different people online that you might follow to learn about keto way of eating, recipes, that kind of thing, they all kind of promote 1 meal a day, which is called OMAD, or 2 meals a day. Be very careful that you don't go, oh, well, then that must be good for me too if all these keto people are doing it, or even these carnivore people are doing it. And the reason the carnivore people are all doing 1 meal or 2 meals a day only is because you actually feel full. You don't feel hungry, and so you kind of naturally fall into that. But if you want to nourish your body and lose the weight, then you're going to want to have your 3 meals a day for sure, as I proved when I had the 140 grams of protein every day by just eating. I was not hungry. I felt amazing. I dropped weight like crazy. So just be wary of the intermittent fasting and check it out more thoroughly if you decide that's a way you want to go. Now, just a side note on low carb eating, so keto, carnivore, or just low carb, you are going to need electrolytes, guaranteed. Otherwise, you're going to start to experience cramping and things like that as your body dumps the excess water it is holding because you're consuming carbohydrates. Now, if you go to keto and low carb this end, it may take you a while before you get to that, because you're still consuming enough carbohydrates that your body's holding the water. So even in just fruit and veg, it will hold the water. If you go carnivore, you will need electrolytes because your body will dump water. You'll see a loss of 2 to 3 kilos, 5 to 6, 7 pounds in a matter of a day or two. It's water, because once you start eating that way, your body doesn't hold that water. So keep that in mind. And also keep in mind that any change of eating, you're going to feel terrible, because you're giving up all the things that your body is used to, all the things that your body is addicted to. You are going to feel awful for a couple of weeks at least. And it's not because your body says, no, this is not a good way of eating for me. It's because your body is dealing with the ramifications of all the things you've eaten up until now. For example, giving up coffee. Have you ever given up coffee? Have you ever given up cigarettes? Horrible. Cigarettes, I couldn't tell you. I've never smoked, but coffee for sure. Giving up sugar, terrible. You feel awful. You think there's something wrong with you, but you don't turn around and think, oh, well, coffee must be good for my body, or sugar must be good for my body, or cigarettes must be great for my body because I feel terrible without them. There is going to be a transition period. So be aware of that. And don't use it as an excuse to give up, because that's what we do. We go, oh, I can't do this. I can't feel like this. I'm just going to go back to normal because at least I felt half normal. Yes, that's true. However, what's going to happen down the track? You're just going to continue to progress your lipedema the longer you eat a normal standard diet with grains, with carbohydrates, with sugars, with fructose, with seed oils. We don't want that for you. We want you to have 3 times more weight loss, and we want you to have 4 times less pain.